You are now locked in the Conspiracy Asylum. Your straitjacket and padded cell awaits.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy Asylum. This is DJ Schwartz once again, and we're going to be doing a solo episode, and this one is entitled Murderapolis. You may be wondering, why is it entitled Murderapolis? Because we are from Minnesota here, and we're going to be talking about 3 major murders that happened within the last 30 years here in Minnesota. And the name Murderapolis I did not come up with off the top of my head, because back in the 90s, North Minneapolis was actually nicknamed Murderapolis because of the amount of homicides that had happened in North Minneapolis in the 90s. Today we're going to be going over 3 different incidences that happened in Minnesota within the last 30 years. The first one we're going to go over is the oldest one, and is the Braum family murders. The second one that we're going to go over is the Minnetonka Mansion murders that happened in 2015. And then we're going to go over the Byron David Smith murders that happened in 2012. So we're going to get kind of a taste of a really old school one, and then 2 that happened fairly recently, which all 3 ended up getting national attention because of the gruesome murders and how they happened. But first, let's do some Conspiracy Asylum trivia, shall we? In honor of our episode of JonBenet Ramsey reaching 1,000 listens, this trivia question is going to be on JonBenet Ramsey's episode. What was the name of the company that John Bennett Ramsey, the father of JonBenet Ramsey, what was the name of the company that he was CEO of at the time of the murders? Go ahead and contact us, theconspiracyasylum@gmail.com, or you can go to conspiracyasylum.simdif.com, and you can also contact us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. And on Patreon, you also get 2 bonus episodes a month if you pay anything from $1 all the way up to $10. Pretty much $1 gets you 2 extra episodes every month. But enough with the begging for money. We're going to get into the Braum family murders. This story circles around one person mainly, and it's David Francis Braum. He was born on October 3rd, 1971. And this one's going to be a little bit different, I think. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to give you the full synopsis right now. We're going to go through the timeline. And then you'll figure out exactly what happens if you don't know about these murders. Once again, if you do not know about any of these cases, do not fear. Conspiracy Asylum's got your back. We're going to educate that ass. Now, to set this up, this was a very Christian Catholic family in rural Minnesota in Cascade Township, which is right around Rochester, Minnesota. It's a very quiet town. Murders really don't happen here, but everything changed on one fateful day in 1988. Now we're going to start out on the day before the actual murders. Wednesday, February 17th, 1988. At around 11:30 p.m., David Braum gets into an argument with his father, Bernard, allegedly over a music album. And the album they got in a fight over was an album by Negativland. They were a college band of some sort. The genre of the band is kind of really weird, so you're going to have to look them up by yourself. It's all one word, Negativland, but there's no E at the end of negative. And they ended up actually pulling a stunt where they said they were under house arrest because of the murders that had happened in Rochester, and they received a lot of attention because of this. Their next album was like their most successful album, and it was found to be untrue that they were on house arrest. They had made it up to get attention, basically. So they had taken advantage of this sad situation for their own personal gain. So, fuck Negativland, whoever the fuck they are, if you're listening right now, here's a big fuck you to you, because anybody that takes advantage of a situation like this deserves just a fucking pineapple shoved up your ass by Hitler, like in South Park. I think that was South Park. Maybe that was Little Nicky. One of the two. Regardless, Wednesday, February 17th, 1988 at 11:30 p.m., David Braum got into an argument with his father. And Thursday, February 18th, between 1:30 a.m. and 3 a.m., so basically Wednesday night still. So this is the wee hours of the morning on Thursday. David has been up since the fight. He goes into his parents' room and kills his father with a 28-inch axe. He proceeds to kill his mother, Paulette, his 13-year-old sister, Diane, and his 11-year-old brother, Ricky, all with the axe. His family members are left dead on the second floor of the home. David leaves an axe near the basement stairs. All in all, he has struck his family 56 times with the axe. Now, that day, the start of school, David is a sophomore at Lourdes High School and is seen at school at the start of the day, but he does not attend any classes. In the family van, he is on the move through the day. His stops included Klutsky Park, Barlow Foods, Kmart, Godfather's Pizza, and he briefly returns to the house. Then at noon, he is seen withdrawing $250 from an IBM credit union, which I'm assuming it was an ATM, but I don't know, $250 is kind of a weird number. Getting that out of an ATM would be really weird because you're supposed to get 20s. Some of them give 10s, but now 5:23 p.m., Oldstead County Sheriff's Deputy Michael Braley and Kevin Torgelson dispatched to Braum home in response to a concerned call from Lourdes. So he must have said something at school, or they noticed he wasn't at school all day and nobody answered at home. Really small town, so they probably all knew each other. Not exactly sure why the school had done that, but shortly before 6 p.m., deputies arrive. They find the home's doors closed but not locked. They discover the bodies on the second floor. They are in a state of rigor mortis, indicating they have been dead for longer than 12 hours. Authorities put on a nationwide alert for David. So there's two things here that do not have specific times. They're just saying that it's in the evening. That's in between 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock because they have something at 6 and something at 11. But in between, they have two of them that just say evening. This is one of the only timelines that I could really find, and I kind of wanted to do a timeline for this one. So, in between 6 and 11 p.m., Joe Braum, David's older brother, is at work at Henry Wellington's restaurant where he is a cook. He is informed of the family's deaths. Later that evening also, between 6 and 11 p.m., David is seen by a former teacher at Northgate Shopping Center. So he went shopping, apparently. And at 11 p.m., the van is found near Methodist Hospital. So the family van was found there. And then there was a night-long search for David. Following tips from concerned citizens, he reportedly spends the night inside a culvert in an industrial area of northwest Rochester. Now Friday, February 19th, 1988, at 8:30 a.m., David Braum is finally arrested inside the Valley High post office. A citizen had seen him using a payphone there and reported him to the police. David is found alone and does not resist arrest. So he's really fidgety and nervous when he got arrested, which for a 16-year-old kid, sorry I didn't mention his age here, but 16 years old, you're gonna be really nervous around the cops, especially if you just got done murdering people with an axe. Now, there's plenty of people out there that really believe that he didn't do it, but what I've noticed is pretty much every single gruesome murder out there that's super surprising to people, they find ways to not believe it, because they don't want to believe that a 16-year-old would be capable of murdering their parents. I mean, that's like a parent's worst nightmare other than your child dying. It's your child killing you. So, I mean, people don't want to believe it, so some people do make up stories. I'm not saying that they're made up. We're going to go through all the evidence here and see exactly what you guys think, but he was very nervous when he got arrested, but he was calm at the 15-minute arraignment in Olmsted County Court. He was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 8 counts of second-degree murder. He is ordered to undergo a psychiatric examination and held under 24-hour watch in the county jail. They were just making sure that he wouldn't kill himself. Now, on the 20th, there's reports of his classmates coming out and saying that it wasn't David who did this, and he wasn't the type. So there's a lot of people going around saying, can't believe that he did this, blah, 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 blah. I don't see this being like a Menendez type of situation where he doesn't accuse them of anything in court. All he does really is he pleads not guilty by reason of insanity. And on February 21st, that Sunday, the funeral is held for Bernard, Paulette, Diane, and Ricky at Pax Christi Catholic Church. Burial follows in Calvary Cemetery. Some 1,200 people attend the service. Holy shit. That's a lot of people. Including several teenagers dressed in punk rock style clothing who sat in a special section set aside for the youth. So they must have been friends of Diane and Ricky. Okay, so within the next month or so, he's moved from several different places because they're debating whether they should charge him as an adult. Because of the gruesome murders and the fact that he is 16, it's not like he's 14 or 13 or anything like that. He's getting really close to the adult age. Now, my stance on the whole thing with the charging people as adults, I think it's kind of bullshit because, okay, you can't go out and decide to buy a pack of cigarettes when you're underage because you feel like, you know, this is a special circumstance. I know you have to be 18 to buy cigarettes, but this is a special circumstance. But our government can say, well, because of the special circumstances, we're going to treat you like an adult. You can't go out there and just decide to treat yourself like an adult. So why can the government treat you like an adult whenever they want to? My stance is that if they're under 18, you gotta charge them as a minor. Now, I think there are special circumstances that maybe within the 6 months of 18 or within a year of being 18, then okay. Maybe we should try him as an adult. Also, IQ and mental health should be a factor in all of that too. March 7th, the investigation finally ends. As far as we are concerned, our investigation is complete and we are preparing for court activity, says Sheriff Charles Von Wald. The Brom house has been under guard since the murders and will continue to be guarded until the defense is done reviewing the site. April 18th, 1988, they basically sell all of the Brom's possessions. I'm not sure where the money went for it, but it totaled right around $210,000, and that included the life insurance policies, personal possessions, and the $120,000 home. April 22nd, 1988, the court decides that David Brom is to be tried as a juvenile. This is Judge Gerald Ring saying this. I don't agree with the outcome, but I have to follow the law. And most people disagreed with the decision. There were polls out there. I hate polls because they're so skewed to whatever you want it to be skewed to. But a lot of people disagreed with that and thought he should be tried as an adult. And on Tuesday, October 18th, 1988, the Court of Appeals reverses Ring's ruling and David is tried as an adult. And then Monday, February 27th, 1989, he pleads not guilty by reason of mental illness. His defense files a motion for venue change, and Judge Ancy Morse takes it under advisement. And then finally, on September 18th, 1989, oh my god, it took him over a year to do this shit. The trial begins. Parking at the courthouse is expected to be in short supply, and 100 prospective jurors are expected to park at the Apache Mall and be bussed downtown to the courthouse. Defense attorney Walters says he has no hope for finding jurors who have no knowledge of the events, which I don't really disagree with him. It is kind of stacked against this guy. In our society nowadays, I mean, back in 88, it was bad enough. But nowadays, with the internet and everything like that, people get crucified before they even know any of the evidence. A big one that we're going to go through is O.J. Simpson. And if you ask the majority of people if O.J.'s guilty or not guilty, they'll say he's guilty. You can ask that same person, what evidence makes you think that he's guilty? They won't know. They will have no clue what evidence actually supports the fact that he's guilty. Now, I do know that there's evidence that supports that he's guilty. I think he's guiltier than fucking sin, but regardless, there's plenty of people out there that just think he's guilty because of the stigma behind it. Now, the actual trial isn't a big deal in this one. The decision of guilty or not guilty is not really what's important here, because the defendant at this point is basically saying that he is guilty, but he wasn't in control of his mental faculties at the time. So he shouldn't spend the rest of his life in prison. He should be in a treatment center of some sort. Tuesday, October 3rd, 1989, phase 1 of the trial is over as the jury finds David Braum guilty of first-degree murder on all counts. After only 4 hours of deliberation, the next phase of the trial, which is the most important part in my opinion because of the circumstances here, is to determine David's mental illness standing. 3 psychiatrists who have evaluated David will testify. Now, on October 15th, 1989, over the sound of church bells from nearby St. John's, and after 2.5 days of deliberation, jurors issue a guilty verdict, sweeping aside David Braum's mental illness defense. He is sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences for the deaths of his parents and brother, and 1 concurrent life sentence for the death of his sister. He will have to serve a minimum of 52 years before being eligible for release at age 70. So even at that point, this kid, he's a kid, this kid's going to spend basically his whole life in prison. Even if he gets out at 70, what kind of life are you going to have after that? I mean, he's almost better off being incarcerated after that. He's going to be institutionalized, and most likely he's going to commit more crimes when he comes out because of the way our prison system is. Like, Making a Murderer is entitled that because of the way our system is. The famous documentary, Making a Murderer, is correct in the fact that people that go to prison for long periods of time get institutionalized, and when they come out, they reoffend naturally because we've created that. We've made that murderer. Our justice system is more based on punishment than rehabilitation, which I do believe we should be more focusing on rehabilitation. I'm not exactly sure how they would do that, but I think it's a better idea than doing nothing and just letting these people rot in prison. Now, David Braum, to this day, is in the Minnesota Correctional Facility at Stillwater, which Stillwater is our main prison here in Minnesota, and it's right on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's not too far from where we live, actually. So I wanted to do that one first because it has the least amount of really controversy in it. Now, you might want to think, what's the evidence against this guy? Well, his palm prints were on the axe. He was the only one not killed that was home. And he was notorious for getting in arguments with his parents. Now, I'm not saying if you get in arguments with your parents, you're a murderer. But this kid was kind of childish in the first place, and he was just acting a fool all the time. Now, trying to blame it on any form of media is ridiculous. I always hate it when people try to blame crimes like this on music, video games, or any type of media. Alright, now we're going to move on to the Lake Minnetonka Mansion murders. This one is very interesting, and there are a lot of questions about this one just for the sheer fact of the evidence. When you go and look at the evidence, and we'll go over everything, but it isn't as clear-cut as the David Braum case. The first article I'm going to go over is one that's kind of geared more towards, I'm not even going to say kinda, it is geared more towards the fact that Brian Short is innocent. And then we'll go over another article that pretty much says that he's guilty. So you guys can kind of get both sides of it, because I don't like to just go look on one side of it. One example of all that, the West Memphis 3, and the fact that if you go and look for documentaries on them, pretty much every documentary says that they're innocent. And they don't present any facts that could say that they're even remotely guilty. Now, they did get convicted in the court of law, so there must be some evidence that says that they're guilty. Me and Kim will cover that episode soon. That's all I'm going to give you. It's got a timeline. I know exactly where I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to tell you when. I like our episodes to be a surprise, to be like, ooh, this one this week. As I've said in episodes before, we like to go right straight down the middle and then say our opinions at the end because we've been swayed one way or another. I have gone through a podcast where I thought one thing at the beginning, and then once I'm done talking, and I've actually said all these articles out loud that I've already read in my head, but when I read them out loud and I start putting things together during the podcast, my opinion sometimes changes by the end of the podcast. It's happened. I might go into the podcast thinking one thing, and an hour and a half later, I'm like, oh my God, they're guilty, or they're innocent, or whatever. And I like the fact that my mind can work that way, because there's a lot of people out there, they can only think one way. So, the Lake Minnetonka Mansion murders. On September 10th, 2015, law enforcement found the bodies of 5 people in a Greenwood, Minnesota home after a welfare check. Brian Short, 45 years old, his wife Karen, 48 years old, and their 3 children, Cole, 17, Madison, 15, and Brooklyn, who was 14, all died of a single shotgun wound to the head. All were found in separate bedrooms except for the father, Brian, who was found in the garage. To kind of set the scene here again with this family, they're on Lake Minnetonka, which Lake Minnetonka is a very high class neighborhood, I guess you would call it. It's around Lake Minnetonka, made famous by Prince, one of Minnesota's gods, Mr. Prince. Drink from the waters of Lake Minnetonka. That thing, it's called talking about Lake Minnetonka, that's here in Minnesota. And Lake Minnetonka is known for the mansions that are on there. You know, people from the Vikings or from the Minnesota Twins or the Minnesota Wild. And a lot of famous people have cabins and lake homes on Lake Minnetonka. So that's the kind of place that this was. Not a lot of murders happened here, if any. And this kind of shocked the whole neighborhood, the whole lake, because of the high-class neighborhood it was in, and the fact that they're not used to even petty crimes over there. And as we were saying before, Mr. Prince, I do believe that's the house that he died in, was on Lake Minnetonka. Rest in peace, Purple Rain, forever. So that kind of gives you guys the setting a little bit. Also, this was a family that used to go on vacations together. There was no reports of any domestic abuse or anything that led up to this event. The new school year began on Tuesday, September 8th, 2015, and by September 10th, 2015, classmates and teachers thought something wasn't right when the 3 short students missed the first 2 days of school. No one would have thought anything of it. But the fact that all 3 of them missed 2 days, That's when a welfare check was requested by a co-worker of Brian's, and then police stumbled upon a grisly scene at the home on Greenwood in Minnesota, which Greenwood was a gated community on the south side of Minnetonka. Only about 700 people lived there. And the family dog Harley was found unharmed. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner ruled Saturday, September 12th, that 5 died from a single shotgun wound to the head, and that only Brian Short's wound was self-inflicted. Brian Short was the founder of allnurses.com, a networking site for nurses, which he started in 1999 when he was still a nursing student. Now, this website, I would almost compare it to a medical community version of WikiLeaks almost, where whistleblowers can go, where people aren't going to get censored, where people can express their true feelings on allnurses.com. I'm not sure if the website's still up and running because of all the bad press that came from it, but he depicted the Excelsior-based company as a success in a 2014 interview with the Star Tribune, which the Star Tribune is our big newspaper here in Minnesota. In the Twin Cities, the Star Tribune and the Pioneer Press are like the 2 big ones. He said he ran the operation out of his home until a year earlier. He had 4 staff people as of a year ago. He said the site was drawing 4 million unique visitors per month, with 150,000 unique visitors every day. And he said he had turned down 50 buyout offers in the past 10 years. Which that will come into play once we look more into nurses.com here. Mike Sateri, the interim chief of the South Lake Minnetonka's police department, stated, "All evidence indicates Brian Short killed his family members in their rooms before turning the gun on himself, and a shotgun was recovered at the scene, but he didn't say where exactly the weapon was found." A lot of people just assume that it was found in the garage, because that's where Brian was. Some might be thinking, what is the motive? Why would Brian, a father, a well-to-do businessman, a very successful businessman and entrepreneur, why would he kill his whole family and then kill himself? Now, the media reports indicated a possible motive. There's a pending lawsuit in New Jersey against allnurses.com, and it was recently moved to Minneapolis at the end of August. And this was speculated to have devastated the founder and CEO. But research shows this was a defamation/libel lawsuit with 16 counts against the company, and it was actually listed as a trademark lawsuit. The company is assumed to have insurance against these types of cases. It may have devastated Brian, but it is not a valid motive to kill his entire family. So what they're saying is that they had insurance. Allnurses.com had insurance for situations like that, for lawsuits like that. Any kind of trademark lawsuit, any kind of defamation or libel lawsuit, they had insurance for it. Now, the next item that was discussed, it's kind of fucked up that this was even discussed, and I kind of laughed at it a little bit. I don't mean to laugh at a situation like this, because it's not funny what happened to these people, but I laughed at this possible motive. They say that financial hardship could have played a role in the motive here. That's ridiculous. They lived on Lake Minnetonka in a $2 million home. All the homes on Lake Minnetonka are at least $1 million. Now, Brian Short stated in a 2014 interview that he received 50 buyouts for his website, and he has turned them all down. The family had recently been on vacation to Cancun in April as well, so they were not struggling for money. Brian Short's networking/information/forum/resource site was dedicated to the nursing profession and is the largest in the world. The revenue was roughly $1 million per year and growing. Advertising on the site was the main revenue producer, and Brian had staff hired to specifically focus on this area. And like I said, they had a $2 million home. There is no motive when it comes to financial hardship. That's complete bullshit. So let's go a little bit deeper into allnurses.com. Now, the guy that wrote this article actually became interactive with allnurses.com. And he had some interesting interactions on here. And he actually followed it up with some screenshots. So he's got proof that it happened. Now, Brian Short was the founder and CEO of allnurses.com. His wife, Karen, is listed as the vice president of the company on her LinkedIn profile. There was a staff of less than 10 employees and a dozen more around the nation, and served as moderators and administrators on the company's website. The writer of this article actually went on to this website several times, and the day after the murders, they had a condolences thread for the Short family and everybody that was affected by the murders, and people could freely post on it. Now, this guy had posted some stuff on there like, I'm sorry what happened and everything like that, but we really need to look into what exactly happened. And he was censored. There were several people that were censored on allnurses.com after Brian's death. And the majority of the people that were censored were ones that were saying that I can't believe Brian did this. I don't believe that he did this. We really need to look into the case more. And they were immediately censored. He was censored several times. But the one that he had put up that put red flags everywhere, he'd actually gotten an email from one of the moderators, the senior moderator of the website. Basically, they threatened him and told him, you can't be posting this type of stuff on this forum. Freedom of speech does not apply to this website. This is a private forum. Let's look into some items that are severely problematic. Now, like I said, they were all killed with a single gunshot wound to the head. The dog was still alive. Brian was found in the garage. All the kids were still in their beds. And now, the use of the shotgun to commit the crimes. First of all, if you're going to walk around and shoot a shotgun, the first time you shoot it, everybody in the house is going to wake up. And I doubt they're all going to stay in their beds. That's the number one problem here for me, is the fact that he supposedly used a shotgun and he shot 5 people while they were sleeping in bed. So you're telling me that all 5 of these people, the last person would have heard 3 gunshots, and then they would have gotten shot after that. So you're telling me that all these people just stayed in their beds? That's ridiculous. There's no way that somebody isn't going to try and get up and go away. I can maybe see it if they were really young children and they were in shock and they were going to hide in their beds. But these were teenagers. These teenagers would have ran away. And there was no defense wounds. There was no signs of a struggle. Nothing. It was just all 5 of them dead in this house. 4 of them dead in their beds. Another thing with the shotgun is the fact that none of the neighbors reported gunshots. This is a very expensive home in a very expensive gated community. On Lake Minnetonka, if you've got a really big house, which most of them are really big, you've got a really small lot. So your neighbors are right on top of you. So you're telling me 5 gunshots in the middle of the night? We're assuming that it's in the middle of the night. They didn't really know the time of death because they didn't really look into it, because they were just straight to murder-suicide, because that's what it looked like. None of the neighbors heard gunshots. None of the neighbors heard a dog barking. That's a very interesting thing, is the fact that the neighbors didn't hear even a dog barking. So even for the people that would think that was an intruder, then the dog would have been barking. But what it looks like is more like somebody went around with a silencer and killed these people. I don't know how you would exactly mistake a shotgun wound to the head with a handgun wound to the head. I'm assuming, I don't know a lot about guns, but a shotgun usually does a lot more damage than a handgun does. Normally a shotgun, I have been into true crime for too long to not know that a shotgun is going to tear you to pieces. And a handgun's just going to put a hole through you. If they thought it was a shotgun, then it probably was a shotgun. But nobody heard gunshots. That is so fucking crazy. So circling back around to the ability to actually kill all of these people without anybody getting out of their beds, you got to think about it. He has to go to one room, shoot, go to the next room, shoot, and he's got to reload sometime within there. Because there's no way he's got 4 freaking shotgun shells in one shotgun. I don't know a lot about shotguns. I don't know a lot about guns, period. But from what I've seen, shotguns don't hold more than like 1 bullet. And also, there was no suicide note left by Brian Short. You would think that a guy with that much money and that much at stake would leave a suicide note if he's gonna kill himself and his family. You would think that he would. But he didn't. And another thing is, too, though, is that if somebody wanted to make it look like a murder-suicide, you would think that they would write a note also. So it kind of goes both ways with the note thing there. It's just really strange that there isn't one. Now, you might be wondering, what is somebody else's motive for killing Brian Short and his family? The only motive that I can think of is to shut his website down. It has something to do with his business that he was involved with. Now, having a website like allnurses.com is kind of dangerous because you are fucking with some high-profile people, such as doctors and nurses, and you're going to be in the middle of a lot of shit with a website like this, because a lot of people reported things that were very illegal on allnurses.com also. If anybody was to come out and say, you know, this is happening at this certain hospital, that certain hospital that might be world renowned is going to have a reputation that's damaged by just somebody going onto allnurses.com and telling everybody what's going on there. Now, it's no secret that there's a lot of theories out there about the pharmaceutical industry and doctors basically taking payouts to suggest certain types of medication. So there could have been somebody out there trying to destroy his company. And evidence of that is all of the buyout offers within the last couple years. 50 of them. 50 buyout offers. Now, that's excessive. That is a lot of people wanting to buy allnurses.com. That is not normal. That is not normal, even for a company like that. Even for a company that's a really hot commodity. 50 buyout offers is a lot. So what I think is if somebody was really wanting to kill this company, they would just have to buy it out and then kill it from the inside, basically. Just shut it down because you own it. A lot of big businesses do that. They'll buy out littler companies and shut them down so they don't have competition. They might buy a device that makes their device obsolete, that they're making a lot of money off of. They might buy the rights to another device and basically destroy it. There's a lot of speculation out there about the fuel industry like this, that people have made engines that run at like 80 miles to the gallon, but the petrol industry buys these patents and basically buries them so that no one can build these. So they still have to pay for plenty of fuel. And I have no straight up evidence for all of that. That's just conjecture I've heard, but it makes a lot of sense. In the business world, I mean, it's a cutthroat industry anywhere in the business world. So if somebody wants to kill something, they're going to buy it out and shut it down from the inside. And another strange thing I kind of want to add, the house cleaning company, Paulina's Cleaning Services, received a phone call by a woman who presented herself as Karen Short. She called to say she's canceling the cleaning service effective immediately. It did not give a reason why. The woman got along great with the family and was shocked to receive the phone call. The question remains, was it Karen who called? This convenient call seems to have served two purposes. Number one, to ensure no one would be in the home in the days before, during, or after the killings. And number two, to help substantiate the narrative of financial difficulties for the Short family. This seems curious to say the least, and the timing is impeccable. I mean, they canceled it right before the murders. That is kind of fucked up right there. Now, the proximity to a similar murder is uncanny because, okay, down in Rochester is probably about a half hour away from us. Not even. And Apple Valley is probably a good 20 minutes away from us. So they're within a reasonable distance of where we live. This one took place in Apple Valley, and it was the same type of situation. David Crowley was a father and a husband. He was 29 years old. He killed his wife, Comel, and 5-year-old daughter, Rainey, before turning the gun on himself, and it took place in Apple Valley. In that case, each family member was found with a single bullet wound to the head, and the family dog was unharmed. The investigation to that particular case is still ongoing, according to the Apple Valley police. So they didn't come out as quickly and say that it was David Crowley. Murder-suicides are really tough if there isn't a note left, for one, and two, if there are questions around it. Now, Brian Short's case, that's closed. The one that we're talking about right now, completely closed. They've already said that it's a murder-suicide. It's kind of fucked up. So we're going to go through a little bit of an article here. I understand we've been talking about this one for a while. We're going to go through a little bit of an article here that supports the official narrative that Brian Short is guilty and he killed his family and then himself. The horrific story made national headlines when a family of 5 was found dead in their Lake Minnetonka mansion. Now, for the first time, we're hearing from the people who arrived first on the scene and the personal toll it's taken on a small police department. Brian Short shot and killed his family and their 3 children last fall before turning the gun on himself. The call to 911 came at 12:20 p.m. on Thursday, September 10th. Sergeant Jim Williams of the South Lake Minnetonka Police Department was dispatched to the scene. Now, a coworker had called and said that Brian hadn't showed up for work, Williams said. The caller said his kids also didn't show up for school. He had recently inquired about life insurance policies, death benefits, suicide clause, and things like that, Williams said. With all of that information going into the call, that made it different than a typical welfare check. Williams had no idea just how different. He remembers walking through an unlocked back door of the Greenwood home. Horrific, he said. It was the worst thing I've ever seen. He first found the body of Brian Short's wife, Karen, in her bedroom next to a cordless phone. I was also terrified, Williams said, because I knew there were kids that were missing, that I didn't know where they were, and I was afraid of what I was going to find next. I'd be scared shitless too, man. 17-year-old Cole, 15-year-old Madison, and 14-year-old Brooklyn were all found dead in their beds. Their dad had killed himself in the garage. Detective Mike O'Keefe worked the case from day one. It took its toll on everybody, he said, but it's what didn't stand out that still haunts the 14-person police department of South Lake Minnetonka. It just seemed to be a normal home, O'Keefe said. A school bag and clothes lined up for the first day of school. Those things are the things that seem to have a lasting impression, especially on me. O'Keefe led the investigation into trying to find answers, sifting through emails, legal documents, and several home safes. An interview with Brian Short's office manager became perhaps the most telling piece of all. Brian Short had founded allnurses.com, a social media website for nurses, for more than 20 years. His office manager told police she had handled all of the company's and the Shorts' personal bills. Earlier that summer, Brian Short asked to get up to speed. She said that's when he first learned what it cost to run his company and his lifestyle, including paying quarterly taxes of over $200,000. His colleagues said concerns over steep revenue cuts and a large defamation lawsuit against his company led to severe anxiety. He began seeing a therapist and was prescribed medication. A neighbor told police just days before his death that Brian Short made a hand gesture in the shape of a gun, put it to his head, and said, "It's just overwhelming." Wow. Despite evidence of financial and mental health issues, South Lake Minnetonka police could never establish a clear motive. Investigators closed the case around Christmas time. Unfortunately, we're never going to know the series of events that happened in that residence. We're never going to have a clear understanding of why, O'Keefe said. As a father himself, O'Keefe admits his personal struggle had been focused on his feelings about Brian Short. Oh man, no, that would fuck me up too, man. They don't know the side of him that I saw, and I don't know the side of him that they saw, O'Keefe said. He's not a monster, even though it was a monstrous act that we saw happen in the house. He was a completely different person to them. A snow-covered teddy bear is the only sign of what happened in the Short house 5 months ago, as police can now only hope others will hear their message if they sense trouble in their families. If you notice something in yourself or a loved one that is different, then you need to talk about it, O'Keefe said. People need to talk to somebody. Now, the evidence that was presented to basically close the case and say that Brian did this, most of the evidence came from Facebook posts that his kids had made. Now, Cole had made some Facebook posts that were a little bit questionable about just depression and hating his family, but he was 17 years old. I mean, any kid at 17 years old is hormonal, and he's going to say some shit, obviously, that he doesn't mean, and he doesn't know what the hell he's saying. I have said some fucked up shit when I was a teenager. You can ask my parents. I was a dick. I was a fucking asshole. And this kid said some shit on Facebook, and all of a sudden, that's the reason why his family was bullshit. I don't see these posts as evidence that the family had problems. It really seems that the family didn't have problems. But now that we've seen both sides of it, you can decide for yourself. I'll give my opinion at the end on all three cases. But let's move on to Byron David Smith. Now, the Byron David Smith case took place in Little Falls, Minnesota, which is located in the northern portion of Minnesota near Brainerd. On Thanksgiving Day in 2012, November 22nd, 2012, two teenagers, Haley Kiefer and Nicholas Brady, had broken into Byron David Smith's home. And little did they know, Byron was waiting for them downstairs with a Ruger. First was Nicholas that came down the stairs, and he shot Nicholas, not once, but several times, shooting him execution style as the kill shot, a good finishing shot as he called it. And next was Haley. She came down the stairs looking for her cousin, Nicholas, and then she was shot. Now, the series of events were debatable up until they found the audio that Byron had kept in the home. And it was very damning evidence for him because it was blatantly premeditated. He could have neutralized these two teens and then been done with it. I bet you anything, you shoot one of these motherfuckers in the foot and you let them go, they ain't never breaking into your house ever again. I don't think killing them was the only option. The court case that ensued was highly controversial, and it split an entire state in two. There is a group of people that still believe that Byron David Smith's actions were warranted, and that the audio that was presented in trial was tampered with. Eventually, Byron David Smith was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. He was 64 years old at the time, so the most he's really going to spend in jail is probably like 20 years. 2 kids are dead. They might have been some hellions as teenagers breaking into people's houses and shit like that. That's definitely wrong. But shooting them execution style, that's a little overkill, for lack of a better word. Now you might wonder what led up to this. How was he waiting for them? How was he going to know that they were going to break into his house? Smith, who was 64 years old and was retired from the U.S. State Department and had a history of international travel to Moscow, Bangkok, and Beijing. Smith's brother described him as a retired security engineering officer. I don't know why I described him as that. This is from Murderpedia. I like this website. It's another one of my go-tos along with MUFON. Prior to the incident, Byron Smith had been burglarized at least a half a dozen times over the past few months. Among the items stolen were thousands of dollars in cash, the watch his father had received after spending nearly a year as a POW in World War II, and medals and ribbons Smith had earned in the Air Force during the Vietnam War, several firearms, and jewelry. Smith began routinely wearing a holster with a loaded gun inside his own home. There is some evidence that Kiefer and Brady committed at least a couple of these break-ins and were being investigated for prior robberies, including one earlier in the day that they were killed. Smith installed a security system to protect himself. So that's where all the audio came from. And I do have some clips that I'm going to play, and I edited them so that they're not as graphic. They're still graphic, so don't show this shit to your kids. They're still graphic. I took out the part where she's like begging for her life, basically, because we don't need to play that on this podcast. The part I'm going to show you is just basically them getting shot. You can hear the gunshots and you can hear them like react to the gunshot. And then you can hear what he says after he kills each of them. Now, the way I edited it, it sounds like it happened right in a row. It did not. There were several minutes in between each murder.
You're dead. Bitch.
So I know that's only like a 10-15 second clip of the entire audio. Now, the audio that was released to the public is about a half an hour long. I listened to some of it. He goes off on a rant where he's practicing what he's going to say to the police and to a lawyer when he gets one. So it's very damning evidence. Now, he had set up in the basement before these two had broken in. he had set up in a basement a tarp to basically clean up the mess. And as he is cleaning up this mess on the audio, you can hear him basically complaining about cleaning up this mess. Now, this guy had lived in this house since it was built, and it was built when his parents were still alive. So it was his parents' house, and then it was his. From the sounds of it, he's never been married. I don't know anything about his personal life. It doesn't really matter. He just seems like the type that is kind of like the poor me. But also, I do not agree with the way that these teenagers were acting. Somebody needed to smack these motherfuckers upside the head. Now, on the day of the incident, this is exactly how it went down. On November 22nd, 2012, Kiefer and Brady broke into Smith's home. Video surveillance captured the teens casing the property prior to the break-in. By his own account to police, Smith was in the basement when he shot Brady twice at the top of the basement stairs and once in the face fatally after he fell to the bottom of the stairs. Minutes later, when Kiefer entered the basement, he shot her at the top of the stairs. Wounded, she fell down the stairs, and after Smith's rifle had jammed, he shot her multiple times in the chest with a .22 caliber revolver. He then dragged her across the floor to set her beside the body of her cousin, and then shot her fatally under the chin. Smith then waited until Friday to have a neighbor call the police, saying he did not want to bother law enforcement on Thanksgiving Day. Audio and video of the events was recorded by Smith's security system. So his own security system was basically his downfall in this one, because he recorded everything. And of course, the courts ended up confiscating all of this material, rightfully so. In a lot of states, there's a stand your own ground law. So if somebody is on your property, you can shoot them and you can get away with murder, basically. But the way he did this does not fall under protection of that law. He immobilized them, which is as far as you can go. And then he executed them. That's when it becomes first-degree murder. There are a lot of people, there's an entire website dedicated to his defense. And it's kind of sickening. I've looked at the website, and they're grasping at straws left and right. I do not believe that they should have any leniency on this guy. You know, he was a military veteran, which thank you for your service, dude, but you're a shitty fucking person. The fact that you killed two teenagers, even though they might have been kind of shitty people themselves, you just made yourself the more shittier person by killing them. Now, this is exactly why it garnered national attention, was because of the debate over the stand your own ground law. But it was pretty obvious from the get-go that this guy was just going to go away for life. I mean, it dragged on for months and months and months, but eventually the courts decided in the correct way that I believe, the correct way of convicting this guy of first-degree murder, because it was nothing but that. You executed two kids. You deserve to go to fucking jail, if not worse. And in my eyes, there is really no debate for premeditation here. As soon as he decided, after they were immobilized, that he is going to execute them, that's premeditation to me. Other than that, he had a tarp set out. He had a gun in his hand. He was ready. So as soon as that glass broke, because someone broke the glass before they came in the house, their fate was sealed after that glass broke. He was going to kill them, no matter what. Even if they tried to run away, I firmly believe he probably would have chased after them and probably shot them. Now, you listened to the audio. It is sickening what this guy said. He goes on and on and on about complaining that he has to clean this shit up and that he had no other way. He was like talking to himself this entire time. This dude was blatantly crazy. After he shoots Nicholas, you can hear him say, which I boosted the audio a little bit so you could hear it a little bit better. He says, "You're dead." And then after he shoots Haley, he says, "You're dead." And then he says, "Bitch." He's a sick motherfucker that deserves to rot in fucking jail. If not worse, man. Somebody kill his ass. But if you've got a different opinion, I don't care. No, I'm kidding. If you have a different opinion, contact us, theconspiracyasylum@gmail.com. And once again, these are real people in real life situations. People get lost in it. I get lost in it too. But I sincerely send my condolences to the families of these two teenagers, to the families of the entire Short family, and to the families of the entire Brom family. These are 3 terrible tragedies that were completely preventable. And again, it has to do with mental health. It all has to do with mental health. If you need help, get help. Remember that. I've said that so many times on Conspiracy Asylum. If you need help, get help. Sometimes it doesn't even need to get that far. Sometimes people just need to be able to interact with somebody else. Like I said, you see somebody alone at lunch, you see somebody alone at work, and they look like they're having maybe a bad day. Go talk to them, say hi. That might make their entire day. I almost forgot to give my opinions on all 3 cases. The first case, obviously, David Brom did it. I have no doubt in my mind. Second case, the Brian Short murders in Lake Minnetonka. I think there's a lot more to that story than we've been told. So I'm going to go with the fact that I don't think Brian Short did that one. When I first looked into this case, at the beginning, I thought it was him. I did not think it was going to be such a rabbit hole of a case. I was telling Kim that this could have been a whole episode by itself. Fuck a rabbit hole. But if you got any more information on that one, I'd like to know. Hit us up. The Byron David Smith case. I think I pretty much gave my opinion on that one already. That dude is guiltier than sin. He deserves to rot in fucking prison. And if you're going to use the stand your own ground law, remember, shoot him in the foot. You heard it here in Conspiracy Asylum. Fuck them all to death and shoot them in the foot. So, if you've got anything to add, if I left anything out, if I was incorrect on anything, if you've got a different theory, hit us up, theconspiracyasylum@gmail.com. You also can contact us at conspiracyasylum.simdif.com, and that'll get sent to my email. You can also contact us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon. Remember, 2 bonus episodes every month that I will be creating. The first bonus episode's already out, and that's for everybody from $1 all the way to $10. So you pay $1, you get an extra 2 episodes a month, along with everything that comes with the $1 tier, which is stickers and the personalized letter. And then the other tiers, obviously, you get other shit. I'm not going to sit here and promote it at all. You can go to patreon.com if you want to figure it out. But that's all I got here. I'm going to end it. Just kidding. That's all we got here at Conspiracy Asylum. This has been DJ Schwartz. There's a helicopter in the room. I've got a helicopter that's coming for me. Your padded cell is now open. You may leave. Bye, co-conspirators. Say bye.
Bye. I mean, bye.
He wasn't here the whole time, I promise. Bye.